Hello there, and thank you so much for joining me on this segment of my Hearing Hearts channel. My name is Raina, and I am the host. I'm also the founder and host of Online Hearing Hearts. That's the video platform that I created where, over scheduled video sessions, I meet with the viewers like yourself who have become members, and we discuss and bring you healing and hope as we journey with you for different types of emotional trauma. Now, that is a very broad subject, so on those scheduled video sessions, we do focus on a handful of specific traumas. Today, I want to focus on one in particular. It affected me very significantly and actually became the launching pad for this channel as well as that video platform. And that is the abuse and the deep damage that is done to an individual after they've been in a relationship with a narcissist. Now, in my case, I was actually married to the narcissist who'd been in my life. My guest today, his name is John. He's a fellow New Yorker. John was also married to the narcissist who's been in his life. Now, I find his story particularly compelling because we do focus on healing through surviving and also through growth from being in a relationship with a narcissist. But John has been able to go a step above that. He has actually triumphed and gotten victory and vindication over the narcissist in his life. So I just want to have him share his story. He's going to tell us how it is that he was able to defeat the narcissist in his life. And I just know he's going to be inspiring because I applaud him and I celebrate him. And that is the question that so many others out there who have gone through this have asked. How do you defeat the narcissist? So thank you so much, John, for your willingness to share.
My pleasure.
Please go ahead and give us some background and then just tell us, how is it that you were able to defeat the narcissist?
Well, first and foremost, I don't really know if you can ever actually really fully defeat a narcissist. So we'll have to go into a little bit more about what that is. So my background is that I was married, divorced for a very short period of time. Didn't know what I was dealing with. We got back together after 7 years. I happen to be a born-again Christian, so I don't believe in divorce. I don't come from a family that's divorced. And when my ex approached me about getting back together again, excuse me, we talked about it, and I didn't want my children to grow up in a divorced household. And I just thought it would be the best thing for our family as a unit to be together and to be husband and wife and so on and so forth, especially when you're sitting in church and you're hearing all these messages about family and marriages and all that other stuff. You know, first of all, you feel like a failure, which I don't like to fail. That's number one. And number two, I don't believe in divorce, but having that Christian background and being a Christian, what I've learned is that the only time that you're really predicated or allowed to have a divorce is when there's infidelity or abandonment. Not even abuse. Abuse, you're allowed to leave, you're allowed to find safety, but that doesn't give you cause to be able to get divorced from your spouse. And we can get into that another day. So when you're hearing all these messages and you're learning about all this stuff, divorce really wasn't necessarily an option for me, and I didn't want that for me, my family, and specifically my ex, right? So the second time around, we winded up splitting apart. And so we were married for about a year, got divorced, went through an extremely acrimonious divorce. In that divorce, I wound up representing myself. When I represented myself, I went against a team of 8 or 9 different attorneys. I beat them all, and I got sole custody of my older daughter. Not because of anything that I did that was special. It's because my ex, who's a narcissist, could not comply with any court order or anything that she did not agree with. And that's one of the things that we're going to talk about, is you have to hold the narcissist accountable. That's one of the first keys to victory, okay? And then what happened is that I got sole custody. My ex-wife took off and actually kidnapped my child, changed her identity, changed my daughter's identity, and I wasn't able to find them for 2.5 years.
Wow.
Here's the frustrating part. As a woman, if a man kidnaps the child or the father, she calls the police, they issue an Amber Alert. Typically, the child is recovered within 24 hours because the child is considered to be in imminent danger. If a mother takes the child is not considered to be in imminent danger. and the cost falls onto the father, or he has to hire a private investigator or someone of that nature to be able to find the child. Okay, so I had some friends. I did everything I could to be able to find my child. I went to the FBI, I went to the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children, I went to the Scottsdale Police Department, the Phoenix Police Department. I tried to get on every talk show I could possibly get on. I even tried to get on to American Gladiator at one point. And that's a whole other story with another day, to be able to find my daughter and bring her back into the fold. So eventually what ended up happening was the FBI took the case. They wound up finding her, and I was reunited with my daughter. And when I was reunited with my daughter, my ex was not allowed to see my daughter for about approximately 4 months. And I promised my daughter that I would not take her away from her mother. And I made good on my promise.
Yeah, and that's admirable.
Yeah, so, but that's not necessarily the best thing. And for people that are out there that are going through custody challenges, I highly recommend that you look up a doctor by the name of Dr. Childress, and he's on YouTube. He has the key on how you deal with somebody in a acrimonious divorce or a custody situation when you're dealing with somebody that's in the cluster of being a narcissist or borderline personality disorder. Now, you don't have to be a narcissist, and you don't have to be a borderline diagnosed. You just have to have traits. And when you have those traits, they will offend 100% of the times. I'll repeat that again. They will offend 100% of the times. So in that, which I didn't know, it may not be necessarily the best thing at first to bring the offending parent back into the child's life. All right, so get into that another day. But anyway, I get my daughter back. We start to get along. It's about 7 years. After 7 years, my ex approaches me. Well, let me back up just for a second. I started going out with my friend. I was in Vegas, and I had an experience, and I had almost like an out-of-body experience, and I was completely sober. And it hit me. And I was like, this is just all a lie. It's just a lie. It's a facade. Right? So I was looking at the people at the bar, and I seen them drinking, and I'm like, actually, that's not real. The first thing that happened was there was a woman, I was in Planet Hollywood, and she was dancing on a pole. And she's basically, mostly naked. And I just looked at her and I said, I feel sorry for her. Mm-hmm. Like, what can cause this woman to have to do this? Does she have an unwanted pregnancy? Does she have a sexually transmitted disease? Does she a single mother? What caused her to have to, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but like basically expose herself, degrade herself to do something like that in order to make money, right? So that's a facade. So in that, while she physically looked beautiful, her interior was broken. Sure. At least that's what I felt, right? And then I'm looking at the bar, and you see the people drinking at the bar. And when you see them up at the bar, you're saying that comes with addiction. Sure. So it's whether drugs or alcohol, there's addiction there. And then when I was looking at the people on the craps table, I'm like, that's gambling addiction, drug addiction, alcohol addiction. So in other words, anytime you get involved with that type of stuff, on the surface, it can be fun. Sin can be fun. Be the first one to admit it, right? It can be fun, but there's always a price. You got to pay the piper, right? And when you have to pay that price, if you have to deal with addiction, you're already dead. You got one foot in the grave and another one on a banana peel. So if you're not dead or in jail, you're going to fight that addiction, and you're mentally shot for the rest of your life, unless you can have healing through Jesus Christ. But even with that, it's still going to be a battle for the rest of your life, right? So I'm kind of getting off track. So I said it's all a lie, and I'm done. And I prayed that God would send me a good Christian woman for 8 months, and nothing. Like literally nothing, right? So I got frustrated. I called my buddy, and I'm like, yo, Frankie, he said, it's Johnny. I'm like, book a trip to Vegas. I'm like, Johnny Balls is back, right? So he's like, it's so great. I'm so excited, yada, 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 yada. The temptation. Yeah, the temptation. And I hung up the phone, and I got like immediately guilt-ridden. And I called him up, and I'm like, I don't care what I got to do. I'm going to get what it is that I want, because I already know how this story ends. I've been in the movie a million times. You know what I mean? And it's the same ending. So that night I said, maybe I need to go to bed and change my prayer, and that God would soften my heart towards my ex if it's meant for us to be together. So within a week, she approached me about getting back together again, which really messed my mind up for a very long time, and actually made me angry towards God for a very long time. So in all of that, we get back together and it all starts up. And I'm not going to go through the relationship. I mean, the relationship dissolves and we start to go through the divorce again. And she goes right back to the same tricks, the same tactics, the same traits that she was doing before. But when you can't identify what it is that you're dealing with and you can't label it, you can't fight it.
Exactly.
Right? So you have to be able to identify what the person is doing, be educated to that, and then be able to call them out on it. Okay?
You have to know your enemy.
You got to know your enemy. But it's a little bit different with the narcissist because you could call them out and then they'll try and gaslight you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So
they're the victim.
They're the victim. You're crazy and you're the cause of the problems. And because you're not saying you're the cause of the problems, you're the narcissist.
Yes,
right? So that's what they'll do to you. And then you start to second guess yourself and you're like, well, maybe I did do this wrong, or maybe I did do that wrong, right? And they know that because they seek you out because they know you're an empath. Mm-hmm. So if you have any type of empathy and you have any type of love and you have any type of goodwill towards people, they're going to look to attach to you. They're like leeches. Mm-hmm. They will bleed you dry until there's no more blood to suck, and they will look for another host to suck the life out of.
So true.
Right? Is it not the truth? So this is like the plan of what they do. So I'm going to just back up just for a second, right? I'm kind of bouncing all over the place, but I want you to understand where I'm coming from. So we start to go through the divorce. And as we go through the divorce, I wind up meeting a girl. Didn't really necessarily work out. And then she said to me, I should go on Bumble, of all things. So I didn't even know what it was. So I go on Bumble, and I wind up meeting this woman on Bumble, and she happened to be a psychiatrist. And she started asking me questions about my ex, and I started to describe the traits of my ex. And she said to me, oh, honey, it sounds like you're dealing with a covert narcissist.
Wow.
And I was like, I don't even know what that is. I had no idea. So I used to say to my ex, I used to say to her, you're like a mafia hitman, right? That's what I used to say to her all the time. But not realizing that there was an actual term for what she is.
Yeah.
Right?
She was like the emotional mafia hitman.
Yeah, total, just craziness, yes. Right? I think my ex-wife is actually a psychopath. Because she actually checks all of those boxes. So all psychopaths will be narcissists, but all narcissists are not psychopaths. Does that make sense?
100%.
Okay. So you gotta educate yourself to all of this stuff. Okay. So what you have to look out for is this for people that are not married in relationships. Number one, they're extremely insecure. That's the first thing you gotta look out for. Okay. And when you're in a relationship or you're starting a relationship with them, they're going to love bomb the crap out of you. Mm-hmm. And the reason why they do that is because they're insecure and they want to make sure that they've gained your trust. And once they realize that they have your trust, it makes them feel more secure because they feel like they got you. Yes. And whatever their fallback is, for a man, it's typically usually money and charm. For a woman, it's usually sexuality and being playful. Mm-hmm. Okay? So a woman will use her sexuality, become very playful to make it like, oh my God, like who is this woman? She's the most amazing person I've ever met, right? Because it's like the constant texting, the calling, blah, 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 blah. And then if you're having sex, usually the sex is really good because they know that's the way to get you as a man.
They want to hook you.
They want to hook you in, right? So once they have you hooked in and they know they have their hooks on you, then it starts with the little digs, right? I don't know. Who knows?
It could be anything.
Could be anything, right? Like, like me, your hair is receding, right? Or your face is getting older, or something to that. Oh, and then you say, really? And then you say, oh no, I'm just teasing. I'm only kidding, right? And then like it becomes more consistent and more consistent and more consistent. And then you start getting upset about it, and then they'll say to you, oh, why do you take everything so personal? Why do you take everything so seriously? You've got to learn to loosen up, right? Mm-hmm. But meanwhile, what they're doing is they're breaking you down, and they're breaking you down, and they're breaking you down, yes. Right? Until you become a shell of who you were, and you don't even recognize who you are anymore. 100%. Once that happens, the other piece of it that they're trying to do is once they start breaking you down little by little, then it starts to get more severe. They want to isolate you from anything that you love, okay? So whether it's working out, reading a book, watching politics, going to church, whatever it may be, being around family members, friends, whatever it is that you enjoy to do, they want to remove that from your life because they want to be the complete focus and attention of everything that you are. And if they're not that complete focus and that complete attention, they're going to do something to upset you.
Yes.
Okay? And by the way, anytime you have like a get together with family, you go into like a work event or whatever it is, they're going to create a problem. They want to stir you like a pot, right? They want to stir you and upset you. And then when you get there, you're so upset you can't even like really enjoy yourself. And they're mixing with everybody because they're happy as pig in mud because they've already achieved their goal by upsetting you, making you feel like a piece of garbage, which then elevates them in their mind because they feel as though, because they're so insecure that they have to put you down.
Yes.
Okay? Now, with all of this being said, if you're following all of this, okay, what happens? So this channel is meant for everybody, okay? But typically when I'm arguing with a liberal, right, or a narcissist, I have an acronym for them, and it's called sinners. They're all sinners, S-I-N-A, okay? So when you argue with them, the very first thing they'll do is they'll try and shift the topic.
Yes.
Okay?
Definitely a narcissist.
That's what, right? That's what they'll try and do. By the way, just so you know, everything you watch on social media, they'll tell you you have to ignore the narcissist. That's absolutely 100% false. What do you do if you have children with them and you can't ignore them?
Right.
And they keep constantly levying false accusations against you? Then what do you do? Because if you ignore them, those false accusations become perception. That perception becomes reality. That reality becomes truth. And then you become the bad guy. And you'll lose custody of your children, and you'll lose everything that you have, including your own dignity and your own sanity. Okay? So when you're dealing with a narcissist, especially when you're dealing in a custody situation, you are not allowed to ignore them. That's the worst thing that you can do because it gives them empowerment. Yes. All right? So you have to call them out and hold them accountable and expose them and embarrass them. It sounds terrible, but that's what you have to do. So you have to, because a narcissist is like I always say they're like an insect, or like a roach. No, I'm serious, they are. So once you expose the light on them, so let's say they're underneath a log, and you pick up the log and they see the sunlight, they're gonna look for something to crawl under so they can't be exposed, right? So the very first thing that you have to do is you have to expose them by using their own definitions and their own words against them. Document everything.
Yes.
But here's what they'll do is they'll gaslight you and they'll double down.
Yes, they will.
And they'll say that you, in other words, and so what happens is once you start to hold them accountable, they shift the topic.
Yes, they do.
That's what they do. They shift the topic. Then they'll ignore your questions. Okay? So it's S is shift, I is ignore. Then when you use your sources, they will try and negate your source. Okay? And then, in other words, so then when that holds them accountable, shift, ignore, negate, and when all else fails, they'll personally attack you.
Attack or accuse.
Attack, and they always falsely accuse you of everything. 100%. And the other thing that the kings and the queens of is projection. Whatever they're accusing you of is what they do.
Doing.
Right?
Yes.
Is what they're doing. So, and another thing is, they always, well, at least mine is a diagnosed covert narcissist. Okay? So a covert narcissist is very subtle, and it's very difficult to pick up on.
Passive aggressive.
Not even passive aggressive. No, it is passive aggressive, but in other words, when they're subtle, they'll just do things very subtly where it doesn't seem like they're being, but they're extremely manipulative. Yes. They manipulate everything and everyone, and they're congenital liars. They will lie. Okay? So what you have to do is you have to hold them accountable and expose them in front of others, showing that they're a liar. You're right. That's the way it is. So once you do that, then they start to pull back and they say to themselves, he's on to me. Yes. Or she's on to me. And they'll fight back. And they always come back for more. Okay? But you got to hit them with the bomb. All right? So it's shift, ignore, negate, attack. And then as soon as you lose your temper or you get upset and you attack them back, they take the so-called moral high ground.
Or they're the victim.
And exactly.
And you're the abuser.
And you're the abuser, and you're, exactly.
Because that's what
they're always the victim. So yes. people that have children and you're going through a custody battle, please, please, if there's one thing you could take out of this video, this is probably the most important point you could take out of the video. The narcissist does not have to say anything bad to your children about you, especially a covert narcissist won't. All they have to do is get the children to believe that both the narcissist and the children are victims. Once they have that victim mentality, that child will rally around the narcissist to protect them. And then you become the perpetrator, even though you're the non-offending parent. That is very, 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 very difficult to deal with. It is very difficult to deal with.
And I think that's where the term the flying monkey came from too, if you're familiar with that.
I'm not.
The flying monkey is the person who supports the narcissist because they're kind of trauma bonded to them. Or
100%. 100%. So, and then what the narcissist will do is they'll try and triangulate with the child to isolate you and attack you. Okay? That's what they'll do. Cannot allow that to happen. You cannot. All right? So if you're going through a custody battle and you're in the court system right now, the way you hold them accountable is you have to subpoena and depose. Subpoena and depose. I'm going to say it one more time. Subpoena and depose. Because when you depose the narcissist and those that are defending the narcissist, okay, and that are falsely accusing you, and you put them under oath, and then you have the evidence to back up what you're saying, they are now boxed in.
Yes.
So when you go to a therapist, all right, this is what I hate about therapy. When you go to a therapist, unless it's a Christian therapist, but when you go to a therapist, don't. It's a waste of time, especially when you're dealing with a narcissist, because they manipulate them.
Yes, they do.
And they become the victim to the therapist because the therapist doesn't see them for what they are. It takes time, okay? It takes, eventually, sometimes they get exposed, but usually even when you're exposing them, because the therapist doesn't hold anybody accountable. The therapist will say, there's your truth, there's her truth, and then somewhere in the middle, that's where the truth lies, right? There's your perception, there's her perception. No. There's only one truth.
Yes.
And that's Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Right? And when you follow him and you live according to his word, that means that you're being truthful.
Yes.
Because in the Bible, in Proverbs, it says that someone that's in contempt will bear false witness.
Yes,
Someone that's a liar will be in contempt of court. I forgot what the exact words are, but it's in Proverbs somewhere, right? So, and it's absolutely true. So, but when you are able to depose them and lock them down into what they say, now when you question them before the judge and they try and lie and manipulate their way out before the judge, you can go to what they said in the deposition, right? And show the evidence and say, this person's a freaking liar.
Yes.
They're manipulating you, okay? And that's the reason why I was so successful with my custody hearing that I had with my younger child. Okay, so just for full disclosure, my older child, I have no relationship with her, which is terrible, okay? Because my ex was able to successfully remove her from my life before I was able to get to the bottom of everything. So she turned the age of 18, and that was it. My younger child, I've been fighting for since she's, 4 years old, 3 years old, now she's 11, and it finally all came to fruition. So it got to where I got awarded attorney fees. The judge called her a manipulator, a liar, a deceiver. She was fraudulent, so much so that she was actually committing fraud with Access Health Insurance while we were living together as a married couple, unbeknownst to me, saying that she was living with her parents so she could put the kids on Access Health Insurance, and she was getting cash assistance from the Department of Economic Security.
Wow.
That's how crazy these people can be.
Yeah, they take
right? This is what you're dealing with. And the only reason why I got this is because I subpoenaed and I deposed, and the whole scam got exposed. All right. So now, if you're not in a court situation and you're dealing with them on an everyday situation, the way to deal with them is that you take their words and you use their words against them to show them that they're lying. Do not allow them to manipulate you. The other thing about them is keep the conversation short. Treat them like a hard-boiled egg.
Good advice.
Right? 2 minutes or less.
Because then they will word salad you.
They will word salad you to death is absolutely right.
Yeah.
Okay? And then if they start to argue about something, whatever it is, make sure that when they argue with you, you expose them in front of someone else.
I think that's key. And that's once you know you're dealing with a narcissist, because when you don't, you are innocently alone with them way too much.
You're alone with them, and then they
And
can
if your word
manipulate and
gets
control.
fixed.
So like my father always said to me as a young child, even into my adulthood, if you want to know who the liar is, you put the two people in front of each other and you question them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how the liar gets exposed. So it's the same thing with the narcissist. You put three people in front of them and you expose a narcissist. And I'm telling you, this is how you defeat a narcissist. It's not by ignoring them. If you ignore them, it empowers them. They may eventually get tired of you not responding, right? But when you have, in other words, when you have something that is of value, especially when it comes to children, you can't ignore.
Right.
You can't negate.
There are certain situations you absolutely can't.
You can't.
You have to co-parent or at least communicate.
By the way, there is no co-parenting with a narcissist.
Correct.
There's no co-parenting with them. It's impossible. Can't.
But legally, you may be asked or expected to be co-parenting.
Well, so I actually went for sole custody, and I got sole custody.
That's
I got sole legal custody, right?
amazing.
Because, in other words, but you have to show how they refuse to co-parent with you, right? And you have to expose them on every possible front that you possibly can. And then they'll say to you, you are delusional, blah, 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 blah. But once they realize that you're onto them and you know their tricks, their tactics, and their traits, eventually they don't want to mess with you anymore because they know what they're dealing with.
They know that you're going to be relentless.
You know, and that's the other key too, right? You absolutely 100% have to be relentless, relentless, relentless. Every chance you get, embarrass them. I know it sounds terrible, but it's the truth. Every chance you get, you pound it home for what they got exposed for.
Calling them out.
Call them out for exactly what they are.
Yes.
100%. You do not let them off the hooks because you want to know why? They're never going to let you off the hook.
Oh, no.
They're going to constantly, falsely accuse you of everything. They're going to lie. They're going to manipulate. They're going to falsely accuse. They're going to do whatever deceitful tactic they have in their arsenal to destroy you personally as a person. And then once they feel as though that they've destroyed you or you're of no more value to them, they're on looking for the next victim.
Well, of course.
That's what they do.
If not already, having that in the works sometimes. They've already planned that. They're already out there looking for the next victim while they degrade you and eventually discard you. I do want to say, back to documentation, for people who, again, aren't in the court situation, how important do you think that is? Because how do you prove that they're lying without documentation?
Text and email.
Exactly. So you're documenting.
You got to get everything in writing. Text and
it.
email. Text and email.
Recording them.
Record everything. Just text and email. So then you could say, really? And then you could show. And when you start and question them, you pardon the French, but you question the shit out of them, right? So when you question them, you hold them accountable to their questioning and do not allow them to try and go off topic and explain. It's yes or no questions, which will drive the narcissist absolutely crazy because they can't manipulate and try and explain and cloud what the argument is.
Right, and try to cloud the reality.
That's exactly what they do. They always try and cloud the reality.
And that's classic gaslighting.
It's classic gaslighting. I'm just telling you, I promise you, if you do these types of things, and then you have to obviously be aware of what they do as far as how they try and manipulate and control and to degrade and to accuse. You got to see their tactics. But if you haven't been married, you don't have children, and you're in a relationship, you're with a narcissist, or you're beginning to get with a narcissist, you have to learn their traits. And once you know what their traits are and you can see how they attack you, that's where I agree with these videos, where it's just better to ignore them and just not even deal with them ever again.
Absolutely.
Get your track shoes on and run as fast as you can. Get out of there. Because you're not dealing with somebody that's logical. You're not dealing with somebody that's normal.
You're not.
So I would lay in bed and I would say, if I did this, I would feel so guilty. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night.
Exactly.
Right? And I don't understand this. Like, how can this person be this way? But
because you think you're dealing with your mind is referring to them as if they are normal, and they're not.
They're not. The pathologies, they're not normal.
They're not.
And what I find amazing about the whole thing actually is, regardless of your education, your background, your culture, your religion, wherever you are, if they are a narcissist, they all act and behave exactly the same way. So once you become knowledgeable to what their tactics are, you can spot it a mile away. You can actually predict their pattern of behavior before they even do it.
Yes.
And because you can predict before they can do it, you can create defenses around yourself, right? Where you can constantly checkmate them.
Yes.
You got to constantly checkmate them. So one of my top 10 favorite movies, believe it or not, is The Count of Monte Cristo. Okay. Right? And in there, they have a chess piece, and it's the king, and he would say kings to you, which means checkmate, right? So you're always playing, not checkers, you're always playing chess with the narcissist. So you always have to think 3 and 4 steps ahead of them. That's right. And that's how you box them in. And the only way you can do that is you have to educate yourself to what their patterns of behavior are, right? And again, you have to question them, and it's got to be yes or no questions. Do not give them a chance to explain themselves. I know it sounds very binary, but you're not dealing with logical, rational, normal human beings.
You're not. You're definitely not.
Right? So, I mean, that's pretty much what I have to say about that. I mean, I could get more into like the marriage and all that other stuff if you want, but that's the way you overcome a narcissist. And I promise you, you will absolutely 100% triumph. 100%. Do not let them off the hook. Question. Hold them accountable, and hold them. Another thing about a narcissist, really quick, I'm sorry. Another thing about a narcissist is they hold everyone else to a different standard than they do to themselves.
That is so true.
Right? They will expect the most impossible things out of you, right? And then when it comes to them, they have no standard whatsoever. You hold them to their same standards that they hold you to, and you question them, and you make sure that you show them that they're hypocritical. And that's the way you overcome them.
You are 100% right. John, thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining me and just sharing your experience. I know this is going to be so beneficial to so many people. And again, keep in mind, not every situation is the same. As in John's case, he had to stay in communication, and he was able to depose because he was in a courtroom where it's already being documented, and that's definitely not the case for everyone. So take his advice, do your own documenting, record if you have to. You're protecting yourself. Record conversations if you need to, save text messages, emails, because once you have it documented, they really can't refute that. And as he stated, also having a witness around is probably ideal. In hindsight, if I had known these things, I would have not gone through the torture that I went through. But the Lord is the one who brings healing, and that is a big part of what we want to bring to you if you don't have a relationship with the Lord. Obviously, that's something that John and I 100% agree on. That's where healing comes from. But you know what? We have a right to defend ourselves and look out for ourselves, and certainly our children or our family. So absolutely, please let me know in the comments if you have any thoughts or questions. I will put.
I just want to say one thing.
Yeah,
one last
absolutely,
thing.
please.
I kind of wanted to do this more from a divorce perspective, especially for men, because there's an epidemic that's going on right now in all Western cultures, where they are trying to remove fathers from the household.
Yes.
It's absolutely true. So documenting and emailing and all that other stuff will help hold them accountable, but it's not necessarily going to be good for you in a courtroom. All right? So when you get into the courtroom, when you're dealing with a narcissist, if you don't subpoena and depose, I promise you, you're going to wind up losing custody of your children. Okay? So what's got to, it's absolutely imperative. The other problem that you have is in Arizona, like, I don't know if people are watching this worldwide, but if people in Arizona, and I don't know how in other courtrooms it is, in Arizona, they'll give you 15 minutes to go over 20 years worth of information.
Yeah, that's right.
And you can't get it all out, right? So if you don't have these subpoenas and you don't have these depositions and you don't have this information ready to go, where you can ask quick questions and get right to the heart of the matter, you can't hold them accountable, and that's how they defeat you in the courtroom and get custody.
So true.
Right? So that weapon that's formed against you is how it prospers. But when you're able to subpoena and depose and go through all of that stuff that you're able to go through, then you're able to request more time from the judge and then methodically break them down and be able to expose them for exactly what they are. That's the only way it's going to happen. If you do not do that, you can take it to the bank. You are going to lose custody of your children. I'm telling you right now, especially as a man, you are going to lose custody of your children. So be smart, protect yourselves, and if they try and manipulate you, do not allow them. I'm sorry, it's a very important word because
I think so.
I can't tell you the amount of men that I've been helping
Yes.
with their custody situation, because there are millions of men that are absolutely broken right now.
Yes,
broken.
you're
You hear all these
100%
stories about deadbeat fathers, but you don't hear the stories about the fathers like me that's been fighting for 20 years for my kids.
Yes, you're
right?
You're right. You are absolutely right. John, thank you so much for adding that, actually, because that is going to be helpful to other people who may be experiencing the same thing. So I'm going to put in the description the link for my website if you're interested in learning more about joining as a viewer and becoming a member so that you can find support in the emotional trauma that you might be experiencing. Not all of it is about narcissism, but that is, as John said, I think narcissism is an epidemic. And that's even what the Bible says, that in the end times, men will be lovers of themselves and just pure evil. And we're seeing a lot of that. And I think that describes a narcissist perfectly. So again, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you, John, so much for joining me.
My pleasure.
I appreciate it so much. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. God bless.